Good morning, everyone. I'm here from San Diego, as you might be able to see the palm tree in the back, wherever it is. I'm at my parents' house right now. Hey, Rachel, thanks for coming on so quick. That's awesome. So, I did this live yesterday, and it completely killed my phone, so I wasn't able to save it. So I'm gonna do it again because we talked about so many incredibly helpful and amazing things when it comes to, oh, that's Buddy in the background if you just saw him. So many amazing things because we're talking more, which we didn't really get to go fully in depth on in our episode, which is all about seed cycling. So seed cycling is a traditional practice that has been done for hundreds of years to naturally help people, specifically women, balance their hormones. So unfortunately, this is something that doctors and people don't know about, they're not told about, they're not taught about. So when you go into the doctor's office, usually they're prescribing you birth control or antidepressants or an array of different things, when really there's an imbalance going on. And one of the biggest first steps that you can make is starting seed cycling. Now we're going to talk a lot about, go into details about how this works, and my whole goal today is really to simplify it. And by no means am I saying like this is like, the pill that's going to fix you and whatever, but it's one of the most powerful places to start, because what it's going to start doing is shifting and bringing things back into balance. And then as we'll talk, you'll see that there's other areas that might need to shift as well in order to bring that back into balance, whether it's stress or whether it's some dietary changes, things like that. So of course, in any natural practice, it's a whole picture, it's a big picture, but seed cycling is an amazing place to start, and it has really big impacts. I did it last year for the first time, which is when I first learned about it, and it really helped me. I'm always tend to have a bit of a hormonal imbalance, some estrogen dominance, things like that I'm always dealing with, and we'll talk about why in just a little bit. So this really helped make me feel so much better, brought me back into balance, and because I was feeling well, I just stopped and wasn't really taking care of those areas that I needed to, and so I have gone back. So again, I need to address that. It worked so well, so I'm going to be sticking to it for at least 3 months. It's good to do it for at least a couple cycles, if not 3 or so, and to be quite honest, I might just try to do it all the way through the summer as well, just to really keep things balanced. So just in general, we talked about in our episode, if you watched it, seeds, sprouts, and then we touched a little bit on hormone balance. So seeds itself, like Kara was saying, is prana, it's energy, it's life force energy. There's so much packed into a little seed. It is amazing. And having seeds, especially this time of year, this is that time of year where seeds are waking from their dormant state. So what we also like to do during this time of year is sprout. So sprouts are full of that young, vibrant energy, that of the full plant, but it's not there yet. So you can have a lot of sprouts, which is essentially like eating a lot of plants, and you're getting all of that benefit. Then when we look at seeds, again, energetically and as women, so seeds are a little thing of creativity, right? And women are creative beings. So even if you want to have kids or you don't have kids or you can't have kids, we are in a cycle, a creative cycle always, right? So one of the biggest forces that helps us with that cycle as well is the moon. So also syncing with the moon is part of this seed cycling that we'll talk about. Because this moon energy is constantly pulling on the earth, of course, moving oceans. It's so powerful up and down, right? So it's doing the same. Women tend to be more in that yin, more of that water element, right? So more of that like motherly pull, that water gravitational pull. So it's very powerful with us, with men as well. I mean, it affects the earth, but women especially. So the moon has a 28-day cycle and women have a 28-day cycle. Of course, we can fall, maybe either longer or shorter depending on that, but that's showing still a little bit of an imbalance. We need to bring it a little closer. So for me, I tend to go a little longer. I need to see if I can try to sync myself a little bit closer. So today, if any of you know, the moon is a new moon. So today is the perfect day to start seed cycling, especially if you don't know where you are in your cycle. So if you haven't tracked it, you're not really sure where you are, start where the moon is. So if you were to start today on the new moon, you would be having flax and pumpkin, which is what I'm having right here. I don't know why I had to check my notes. So I have it in my oatmeal right now, and that's a really easy way to get it. So you would be having this for the next 14 days. Then of course, in the middle of your cycle is when you ovulate, and then you would switch over for day 15 to 28, you would switch over to sesame and sunflower seeds. And what you would do is just take a tablespoon of each seed every day, mix it in with your food, your smoothies. You can even like eat them, but flax seeds are a little hard to kind of just like pop in and eat them because they get a little gelatinous, so you can just throw them into your food. So it's really that simple, but we're gonna kind of go back and start talking about the basics of it all. Oh, Rachel said, Flow Living is a great app for syncing cycles to the moon. Oh my gosh, that's so great. I'm writing that down. Flow Living. Thanks, Rachel. FLO Living. Okay, great. I would love that. So that's a really great resource that you can use to try to see and sync yourself and see what's going on with the moon phases and all of that. That's fantastic. So when we're talking about the hormones, we're not just talking about our reproductive hormones, right? When you think about it, there's thyroid hormones, there's insulin, which is a hormone, there's stress hormones, right? So this whole system is called the endocrine system, and it's a system of glands in the body. It includes your adrenal glands, right, which is kind of that fight or flight, stress, all of that. It includes, of course, your ovaries or your testicles in men, and then it goes to the pancreas, which secretes insulin, which is a hormone. It goes to right above your heart is the thymus, and the thymus is where your immune system lives and your fighter T cells are, and then it goes to the thyroid, right, and then here is the pineal gland or your third eye, and your pituitary and hypothalamus is in your brain. So these glands up here are kind of more of the they're kind of the firing squad. They're like, okay guys, this is what's going on. We're gonna fire here, we need more of this here, right? And then down here, these are the ones that are kind of producing a lot of those hormones that is being produced here. But these glands are also producing hormones because hormones are the way of communication in the body. Hormones are also our feelings that we have. So they're so important. They're really our communication center. So that's what we're talking about with the whole system. So if we find an imbalance, say, which is so common in our world, is estrogen dominance. So if we find that, right, so of course that's a reproductive hormone in women. It's also in men, it's just higher in women. If that's out of balance, then usually other things are out of balance as well. So, we've gotten a question as also about the thyroid and if this has anything to do with the thyroid. And it absolutely does, because it all works in a system. So if something's out of balance, that means something else is also out of balance. So you can bring in the seed cycling, which will help balance out the reproductive hormones, and by default will start to balance out other hormones in the body. So, like I was saying before, I tend to have a bit of an imbalance. My imbalance comes from my pancreas, actually. I tend to get really low blood sugar, and I'm one of those people who will just, even though I know better, and even though I'm like, my job is food, I'll go as long as I can without making myself something to eat until I'm starving, and then it's too late, right? And I've now sent myself into a low blood sugar state. So what that does is insulin is like a key to open up the cell wall so that glucose can go into the cells. What happens there is there almost is like this distrust that happens, and so when insulin then is released, the cells are like, we're gonna change the locks on you, like we don't know when our food's ever coming, like we don't need you anymore. And so then insulin can't open the cells anymore, and then the glucose comes in, right, your food, and floods the body but can't get into the cells. So it's this, and this is very common in diabetics, right? That's more of the extreme version of it. But I'm not diabetic, but I tend towards an insulin resistance similar to them. So that is what I'm going through, which is throwing off my hormones in that way, which then is throwing off my estrogen levels and things like that as well. Another common way to get it is with adrenal fatigue or stress and chronic stress and things like that, and chronic go and living in that fight or flight. So your adrenal glands are secreting a lot of the cortisol and adrenaline hormones, so it's secreting that into the body. And then what ends up happening just in general, when you have an excess of hormones secreted into the body, it has to clear. But because we have so much, it usually is congested and it won't clear. So it stores in the body, right? So it'll store as fat cells. And what actually ends up happening is that these fat cells then produce their own estrogen. So this is how, with just stress, we can actually get an estrogen dominance in the body, right? So, or with excess insulin, like I have, also stores as fat cells, produces its own estrogen, and now I have an estrogen dominance as well. So you can see it can come from different areas. This is why the root cause, you want to dig a little deeper and see really where that's coming from. But like I said, the best place to really start here is with seed cycling, because it'll naturally bring things back into balance. So just to go into estrogen dominance, because it is so common, and it's really the culprit, really the root of what's going on when we're talking about breast cancer, when we're talking about ovarian polyps or cysts or uterine lining with endometriosis, infertility, painful periods, irregular periods. So many different things have to do with this estrogen dominance in the body, because like I was saying, when we have all of this excess estrogen, the liver can't clear it. So then it ends up settling, it has to settle somewhere in the body. And so it'll usually settle in areas, there's also usually an energy stagnation. So just a little side note about this is that the endocrine system that I just talked about is the physical representation of the chakra system, which has been studied for thousands of years. And it's the energetic wheel bodies that circle around these areas, which are these glands, right? So that's why hormones aren't just physical, they're very, very emotional and energetic as well. So we need to also be addressing that energetic and emotional body as we're feeding it properly physically, if you see what I'm saying. So basically the estrogen is dominant if there's energy stagnation in an area, like in a certain chakra. Usually that'll be in that second chakra right here. It might settle, and it'll, as the cells collect, it'll turn into a polyp or a cyst, or grow further into a tumor, or it can settle in the breasts and turn into fibrous breast, fibrostic syndrome, or full-on breast cancer, right? So estrogen is produced in the ovaries and in the gut, the liver, and the breasts as well, and also in the fat cells, like I was saying. So we just want to know that that's where it is, but those are also areas that it will settle, right, when there's excess. So estrogen itself is not bad. So it gets kind of a bad rap because of this condition of estrogen dominance, and people go, oh my gosh, excess estrogen, when it's imbalanced, will make you feel crazy. It will make you feel, all of these things. So you think, okay, maybe it's really bad. But the thing is that there's multiple kinds of estrogen. So there's technically, I think, 16 kinds of estrogen, but we really only talk about 3 because they're the 3 main ones. And they literally even go by like E1, E2, E3 just as short, because they have their little medical name. But basically what is happening in an estrogen dominance is we're usually higher in the more toxic form and we are lower in the good form. So you can actually be estrogen dominant and estrogen deficient at the same time. It's just you're dominant in one that's not beneficial, and you're lacking the one that really is beneficial, right? So the beneficial estrogen is the one that really gives women like smooth skin, no facial hair, all of that. It really makes women women. It's starting to rain. Anyway, it's just drizzling. It's San Diego. But anyway, so So that's, estrogen is so important. And again, men have it too, but it's just a much lower amount. Then the next step to understand as well is that there's an estrogen and progesterone balance. They're like a partnership. They work in kind of a ratio. So it's like if you were with a partner and they aren't very strong in one area, you would take over and do that. But then an area you're not very strong in, they would take over and do that. Well, when there's someone dominating a relationship, that means the other person is a little bit less, right? So that's progesterone and estrogen. So when we have an estrogen dominance, progesterone goes down. And progesterone is more of that like feel-good hormone. It makes you feel really good. It's also, when we're talking about fertility and things like that, it's a holding hormone. So it's still raining. So it holds the embryo in the uterine lining, and so this is really important to have a full term pregnancy, is to have a good level of progesterone in the body. So that whole balance is going on there with I'm just getting this towel out with progesterone and estrogen. So what else was I going to say about progesterone? Anyway, so just moving forward as well, so with fertility, seed cycling is fantastic, right? So that you can start bringing your body back into balance to make sure that if you're looking to get pregnant, this can be successful. Also, even if you're not looking to get pregnant, but you're on birth control and don't want to be, or you have hormonal imbalances and they've just given you birth control and you're just like, it's not working, it actually makes me feel worse, which is so common. So if you get off of birth control, this is a fantastic, and even if you're still on it, you can seed cycle, and this will really help at least nourish that cycle. But if you're getting off, this is a great way to get your true cycle back as well. So a couple of my clients right now, I'm just talking with them through this, and so it's like allowing your body to get rid of that synthetic hormone that's going on, because it's kind of putting your body to sleep, right? Your body essentially, when you're on the pill, thinks that you're pregnant. So you can take that off and then bring in the seed cycling, which is going to bring your cycle back into balance, your true real cycle. And just a side note as well about having a period on birth control, it's actually not a real period. It's called breakthrough bleeding. So many of us have been on birth control for like 10, 15, 20 years. We actually haven't had a true period. And this is a real crime and shame, because women are so powerful. We are, like I was saying earlier, creative beings. We have all of these seeds, which are not just all going to turn into babies, that would be literally impossible, but these are seeds of creativity in terms of ideas and things that we are bringing into this earth. So we have this cycle that we go through where we're bringing in a new idea, we're nourishing it, we're holding it, we're giving it space, and then we can also release it into the world. But also we can release the things that aren't serving us anymore, which is one of the biggest things. So when it comes to having your period, it's a time of release, obviously, and that is also for the emotional body, the energetic body. Women tend to hold. We're very good at being very empathetic and holding space for people. We literally have a womb that allows us to do that energetically, right? We're talking the chakras. This would be your second chakra. We have this capability. So we hold in people's emotions and feelings and baggage sometimes from other people, but we need to make sure, and that's very great, and that's the role that women do so well, is being that supportive force and that creative force behind things. And they don't have to be behind, but I'm just saying that like that is the superpower that we have. But we also need to release that, because if we don't and we hold on to things too long, then that's when this stagnant energy happens. And with being on birth control, in my opinion, this is why depression and other things like that are so common. And also, honestly, a difficulty in getting pregnant after you get off of it, maybe not right away, but like, I mean, this is so common, and almost every woman's been on birth control in her whole life. So I'm like, Well, if she was never able to clear, then she still needs to clear before she's even ready, to have a baby. So it's just kind of this like stagnant stuckness. And so just from the symbolism of a period, it's a cleansing time, it's a time just to release, and it's a really, really powerful time, because again, we're these creative beings. We're the ones that are so powerful. And in traditional cultures 3,000 years ago, women were the ones who were consulted about everything, because they were so powerful. They could bring something into this world, and they could also, because of that, they believed that they had the power to over birth and death. So they were very, very powerful. Hey Jill, thanks for joining. So harnessing this energy as women is so powerful, regardless if you want to have kids or not want to have kids, whether you are, menopausal, postmenopausal, or, have had your ovaries and uterus and things like that removed. So you might not be having like an actual cycle like that. We are still cycling. Hey Lori, so good to see you. I hope to see you up in Newport maybe this weekend. That would be awesome. We're headed up today. So that's really what's going on with the whole cycle. And then the moon, again, like I was saying, pulls into that as well. So syncing with the moon, and especially if you don't have a cycle anymore, syncing with the moon is very important. And you can do that with seed cycling. Again, just start today is the new moon. So you can start again with the flax seeds and the pumpkin seeds. Do that for 14 days and then switch over, because it just keeps you in that rhythm, which is really, really healthy and really, really powerful for women. So actually, Jill, I was going to answer your question about if seed cycling can work for men. So men actually don't go through the same cycle, I mean, obviously, but that's not really what I mean. So as women, so women function on a 28-day cycle, men function on a 24-hour cycle, which might make sense because their yesterday is just like the day before, and tomorrow is just like another day. Versus with us, we're like, oh my gosh, the way I was feeling yesterday is so different than how I was feeling last week, right? Because we have this longer, slower cycle. They go through the whole thing in 24 hours. So it's very different on that just energetic perspective. And so with seed cycling, we're really taking in the 28 days, right? That full cycle. And we're also really focusing on these seeds. So flax seeds are high in estrogen, and you might think, okay, well, if there's estrogen dominance in my body, I might not want to have estrogenic foods. Well, like I was saying before, there's different types of estrogen. So foods tend to be high in the good forms of estrogen. So when we have an estrogen dominance, again, it's in the toxic versions, and we're low in the good. So if we bring in more good versions of estrogen, like flax seeds and things like that, it's gonna raise the good, which is fantastic. So that will help balance that out, if that makes sense. So these seeds are kind of specific towards the main hormones in women. Again, men have estrogen as well, but we just have more, which is just more dominant in our bodies, and that's usually what we're trying to balance. And then in the second half of the cycle, we have the seeds, sesame and sunflower, which help with progesterone, which again is that feel-good hormone. It's that hormone of holding, a hormone of allowing you to nourish something, and all of that. So that's what's going on there. And then you asked another good question about is this good to do while pregnant? So when you're pregnant, you are in a different cycle. Now your cycle is going for this 9-month cycle, right? It's different than 28 days. So what I would just recommend is doing seed cycling, when you're not pregnant, or even when you're trying or whatever, right? It's really gentle, so it's not anything to be afraid of. But when you're pregnant, you don't really need it anymore, because you're not going through that you're in a different cycle of pregnancy, right? It's like a 9-month thing. But you can still just notice the moon, and so when we're talking about the moon too, so a new moon right now is a time to kind of go within, right? It's the time to reflect and maybe to be by yourself, or like this is the time where you're like, I don't know why, I just want to be alone, like people are just bothering me, right? So this is that new moon energy. It's dark, it's going within. And then as the new moon, so we're also thinking about the things that we want to bring into fruition, our new ideas. If you're wanting to start a business, like this is the great time to kind of get all that stuff together. And then as the moon starts to emerge, this is when you start putting that business out there, right? And you start getting all this stuff put together. And then, at ovulation in the middle, right, you're like, okay, maybe I can start like talking about it, getting it out there, right? We're really getting this going. And then the second half of it, we're like, okay, this is how I'm going to nourish it. I'm going to feed this idea. And then at the end of the month, that's when we release it, right? And then we also release what's not good for us anymore. So actually towards a full moon is usually when you also don't really want to start anything brand new, right? You just want to let it shine. So like let it all shine. And then the moon will start to wane again. And we start to say, okay, these are the changes we're going to make next month. We're going to do this, and then do a little bit. Then the new moon comes, a little bit more self-reflection. And then after that, you start something new again, if that makes sense. So this is the energy of the moon that's always working with us. And women can really harness that really well. So you can focus on that just in general. Even if you're not cycling because you're pregnant or because you're menopausal or you don't have a cycle anymore because you've had ovaries or uterus or anything like that removed. So you can still harness this energy because this is what women are going through. And when we're against that energy, that's when we feel like, oh my gosh, why is this so hard today? But I did that last week and it was so easy. This is that energy that we're feeling. So being in harmony with that. Let me see what else I wanted to say. Oh, and also a really fun fact that I realized when we were, so we've been doing a lot of sprouting, and I would like put some sprouts on my salad, I think, or something the other day, and I was looking at it, I was like, so there's this law in nature, and it's this study, and they've done scientific studies and seen how it really does correlate, that foods, it's called the doctrine of signatures, foods that look like certain parts of the body help nourish that part of the body. So for example, if you cut a carrot into a circle, you look at it, it has the little iris and the pupil, right? It literally looks like an eye, and we know carrots are good for your eyes. Walnut looks like the brain. Walnuts are great for the brain. A beet looks like a heart, great for the heart. Little things like that, right? So that's how nature, hey Meredith, thanks for joining. Nature looks like the parts of the body that they're good for. So with seeds, like we were saying, seeds are very symbolic to the seeds in a woman's body, right? Again, whether you're wanting to turn that into a baby or not is not a big deal. It's just a seed of creativity that's going to come into the world. So that is representational of a seed. So seeds are going to be really, really good for women. Well, I sprouted some sprouts and I was like, oh my gosh, and sorry not to like make you not like sprouts anymore, but I was like, this actually looks like a sperm. That's amazing. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is such an aha. And I called Kara and I was like, Kara, oh my gosh, can you believe this? Like, sprouts must be so good for men. And so we actually looked it up, and it's true. There's all of the like nutrients and everything like that is good for male hormones and all of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. The seed is fantastic for women, and then the sprout is just that ability to be fertilized, right? And so good for men. Again, whether they want to have a pregnancy or not, it's just to help balance their body. So that was really exciting because that's true, and it's just, that's how simple food really makes it for us, right? So what it looks like is really going to help us. So to answer your question, Jill, sprouts would be awesome for men, and then maybe more of the seed side, that's why we're seed cycling. Maybe guys could sprout cycle. I don't know, maybe that's a new thing. Maybe we could do that. So that's what's going on there with seed cycling. We kind of ran through a lot of different things, but just looking again, it's the whole system of hormones. It's all in our endocrine system. So even though we're balancing our reproductive hormones, when we bring those in balance, the other areas can start to balance as well, whether we're dealing with thyroid issues, whether we're dealing with chronic fatigue. But then, like I said too, because this is a holistic practice, we're bringing in this food and these seeds. We also want to bring in the other practices, especially energetic practices when we're talking about the chakras and these energy bodies, right? So if stress is a big thing for you, you know, that's really what we want to look at in terms of the adrenals. That's a lot of third chakra. We want to reduce the stress, you know, more breathing and breathing into the belly, breathing into that third chakra to help really nourish the adrenal glands, if that's for you. Different things like that. So that's why it's, again, a full body study, but seed cycling is the best place to start. So, and if you want to get off birth control, start seed cycling and it'll get your real cycle back. So yeah, so that's really all I had to talk about. I'm so happy all of you joined. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm here in San Diego until Sunday. Again, Lori, maybe I'll see you up at Newport Harbor. But yeah, so we'll see you guys later. Thank you so much. Next week we're coming out with our allergy episode on Monday, which is really exciting. We talk a lot about seasonal allergies, what that means, how to support the body, clear the body out, and all of that. Oh, thanks, Rachel. Get dry. It stopped drizzling, so and actually it looks like the sun might come out. That would be really awesome. So anyway, okay, well, thank you guys so much. Take care, and we'll see you guys next week, next Thursday. We're normally on Thursdays, so see you next Thursday. Bye.